Hey guys, welcome to this video today. In today's video, we would be solving some questions, scenario-based questions on Agile, which is one of the most important topics for your PMP exam. With the revised syllabus of the PMP exam, which was rolled out last year, PMI is focusing a lot on the theory and practical part of Agile project management. So needless to say that you need to have a solid understanding of Agile and Scrum to do well in your PMP exam. So in this video guys, we would be picking up some questions on Agile and solve it together so that you know what kind of questions to practice from Agile for your PMP exam. But before we start guys, I hope you have registered for my second batch of PMP exam Masterclass on Lighthall, which is starting on the 14th of May. It's a 35 PDU course, completely virtual, to help you prepare for your PMP exam by developing your analytical and problem solving abilities to solve scenario and situational questions. Check the link in the description section of this video or watch this video right here, which will tell you the details of this course and how you can register for the same. So on that note, let's go to question number 1 from Agile for your PMP exam. So question 1 guys, pause the video, read the question carefully and try to answer it before moving forward. Okay, so we'll start solving this now. Okay, so Maria is a project manager for a virtual team. Virtual team is very important guys, and midway during the 4th iteration of product development, she finds out that the team dashboard which shows the progress update of the project is not registering any updates. What action should Maria take now to resolve this situation? Now if you read the options very carefully guys, and I think this is one of the critical learning points for this question, you should be knowing about the key terminologies such as iteration, daily stand-up, business value, etc. Okay, because if you don't know these basics, you won't be able to comprehend the questions properly and you will invariably end up choosing the wrong answer. Now I will link a few good Agile courses on Udemy which you can check out if you are still struggling with the basics of Agile. Now in this scenario, let's see what is the best possible option for Maria as a project manager. Option A. Ask the team to send updates over email and stop using the dashboard. Now this is too naive guys as an approach of a project manager. Okay, you just can't discontinue the use of a dashboard which you were using in the first, second and third iteration suddenly in the fourth one. Okay, also imagine the level of complexity you will experience if a virtual team like this, I mentioned that this one is very important, right? So if a virtual team like this starts sending you email updates for every task, it will be utter madness guys. Okay, so option A is invariably a wrong option. Option B. Discuss in the daily stand-up the most effective way to fix the dashboard. Now to evaluate this answer, you should know what stand-ups are. Okay, very briefly, stand-ups are daily meetings that happen during Agile projects where the previous 24-hour updates and the next 24-hour plan is discussed and aligned with the product owner or the Scrum Master. Okay, also the team discusses the impediments and risks in the meeting, and this is a risk which you have. Okay, so B is a very strong choice guys. However, we'll still not finalize it till we have evaluated all the other options. Okay, now let's go to option C. Develop a priority matrix and assess how important it is to fix the dashboard to create business value. Now this can also be a possible options guys. Okay, you can argue that a priority matrix is important and in the end you need to assess how important it will be to help create business value. So C is a potential option guys, and we'll hold this option for now. Option D. Update issue register. Okay, now if you know about what is a issue register, whenever there is a risk which was preempted and it converts into an actual risk in the project, you go and update the issue register. So you should know the difference between when to update a risk register and when to update a issue register. Now this is an operational issue which you are solving guys, and it was not a risk that was like preempted, so you are not knowing that the dashboard will crash. Okay, so updating issue register is a wrong option because it's not a risk that has materialized 100% into a project. Okay, so updating issue register is a wrong option. That leaves us with option B and option C. Now it's very important guys that you understand that developing a priority matrix to assess how important it is to fix the dashboard to create business value It's, let's say, a redundant option, guys, okay? Because in the end, the team was using this dashboard for the first, second, and third iterations. And since it's a virtual team, as we have seen right here, it's very important to keep that single point of communication, which is the dashboard, across multiple members placed across different geographies, okay, to function well. So that's very, very important. So even if you do this exercise of option C, which is you develop a priority matrix and you assess the importance of it to create business value, you will invariably end up with yes, it is important and it is relevant for creating business value for your customer. So it's a pretty futile exercise, guys, because in the end, you know, the dashboard is important for the customer and for your agile team as well, okay? So C is definitely a wrong answer for this particular reason, okay? And the correct answer to this question is option B, which is you need to discuss this issue in a daily stand-up, because in the daily stand-up, you talk about risks, you talk about impediments which will affect your plan for the next 24 hours, right? So B is a very good choice, guys. Discuss this issue in the daily stand-up and the most effective way to fix the dashboard. So the correct answer to this question is option B. I hope you learned something new with this question, guys. And now you know what kind of questions to expect from Agile in your PMP exam. Now note that in my Masterclass series, I not only solve questions like this with you in the class, but also I will help you to understand the frameworks which you need to use in your PMP exam to solve questions not only like this, but also of other genres from waterfall or hybrid project management. So now let's move on to question number 2. So question number 2, guys, pause the video, read the question properly and try to answer it before moving forward. Okay, so we'll start solving the question. So during a daily stand-up meeting, so now you know what are stand-up meetings and what are discussed during a stand-up meeting. Several unforeseen impediments have been highlighted by the Agile team. Okay, good. This is related to a legal approval that has now become mandatory after a new legislation has been passed by the government. Okay, so this risk was not preempted before, but it's happening now. You as the project manager now need to assess the impact of this impediment. Which parameter is likely to be ranked highest in your risk impact analysis or RPN score? Now, RPN is an important terminology, guys. This means risk priority number. Okay, so you need to get used to these kind of acronyms which are very common in the PMBOK terminologies. Okay, so the question is asking that which parameter among these 4 options A, B, C and D is likely to be ranked highest in your risk impact analysis. So let's start evaluating the options. Okay, manageability. Okay, possible. You can reason that yes, managing a risk is important. So if you want to rate it from 0 to 5, you may rate it like 4 or 5. It's important. I understand that. We'll hold this option. Option B, connectivity. So connectivity essentially means impact analysis. So you need to understand that whenever a risk is occurring, how it is connected to your scope, how it is connected to your schedule, how it is connected to your cost, how is it connected to your resources. So if you are changing a variable, what other variables of your project it's impacting. So that's connectivity, guys. It's a very important option and a very close option as well, because whenever a risk occurs, it not only affects that vertical of the project, but it also affects multiple other verticals of the project as well. So we'll hold connectivity as well. Dormancy. So this option can be ruled out very easily because dormancy will be very low, because you know that this legal approval is now important because the new legislation has already been passed, right? So dormancy score will be very low because the risk has already occurred. Okay, so we can eliminate dormancy. Option D is controllability. Okay, so this means that how easy it is to control the risk, whether it is within your organization and you can control it very quickly and very easily, or it is outside your organization as well. Okay, now obviously it's outside your organization because this new legislation has been passed, but what is internal to your organization is the risk response, on how effectively you are able to respond to this risk. So you can hold controllability as one of the options as well. With the first iteration, we are left with A, B and D, guys. Okay, and we have eliminated option C. Now, if you have attended my Lighthall sessions in my first batch, we have talked this concept of data gathering before problem solving. Okay, so whenever a problem occurs, guys, and this is one of the frameworks that we'll talk more if you are attending my second batch of the Lighthall session. Okay, so effectively, whenever a risk is occurring or whenever an issue is occurring in your project, you should not jump into solving the problem without proper data gathering and data analysis. Okay, so that's very important, guys. The first step of solving any problem is data gathering and impact analysis. So it's very important. If as a project manager, you are jumping into solving without data gathering, you are not a good project manager as per PMBOK. It's very important, guys. So if you know this framework, guys, it is very obvious and you can answer this question very easily. How? Connectivity, right? So what is connectivity? We talked that connectivity tries to establish with this risk occurring in your project, which verticals of the project it's impacting. Okay, so essentially it's doing like a triple constraint analysis, and not only in the triple constraint, it's trying to analyze resources, trying to analyze risks on communication, etc., etc. So that's a part of data gathering, guys. That's how you understand that whenever a risk is occurring in your project, where all it's impacting. So if it is a low impact issue, risk response will be different. If it is a high impact issue, risk response will be very different. So it is important for you to understand how critical is the risk for your project, okay? And that's a part of data gathering. So with that framework, if you assess this question, the obvious answer is option B, which is connectivity, because manageability and controllability are part of your risk response, guys, okay? Not your risk analysis. So after you have established the connectivity and you have like assigned a score in terms of how critical is the risk for your project, then you go into the discussion of how quickly you can manage it, how quickly you can control it, etc., etc. Okay, so that's why manageability and controllability is not the correct option, guys, because it's focusing more on the action part of the risk and not on the analysis and data gathering part of the risk. And as we go back to our framework, which we learned in our Lighthall class, and if you are joining my class next time, you will learn this as well, that whenever a issue or a problem occurs, the first step of the problem is data gathering, okay? And connectivity syncs with that concept, that framework. So that's why the correct answer to this question is option B, which is connectivity, okay? So in this question, guys, you learned that how important it is to collect data, to do due diligence with your data before you start solving a problem, okay? So it's very important learning, guys, and you need to remember this for your PMP exam. Never jump into conclusions or jump into problem solving without spending sufficient time for data gathering, okay? Now with that, let's move on to question number 3. So the third question of the day, guys, pause the video, read the question properly and try to answer it before moving forward. Note that it's a multi-select question and there are 3 correct options among the 5 options. Right, okay, so we'll start solving the question, guys. So let's read the question first. Norman is leading a 5-year agile project for Ground Scanner. That's a company to develop an application that uses machine learning algorithm to propose geotechnically stable building foundation locations by analyzing ground scanning data. Okay, that's a very tech oriented scenario. So what essentially the algorithm tries to do is, so it scans the ground and gives you the location where it's more stable to build a foundation for the building. Okay, as simple as that. Now let's go forward. A new fixed state product feature has been added recently to the application by Ground Scanner. So it's a fixed date product, means you need to deliver it at a particular date which has been stipulated by Ground Scanner. Norman has updated the scope statement and schedule baseline. Okay, so that's good. So it's a new scope. So scope statement and schedule baseline should be updated. Which of the following documents most likely needs to be updated as well as part of this additional request? Choose 3 options. Okay, so with that, let's go and start analyzing the options. Option 1, issue log. Okay, now you can say that yes, this is an issue because this has happened in a project, but as per PMBOK terminologies, you need to understand the difference between an issue and a risk. When you preempt something which can affect your project, which has not occurred yet, that's a risk. Among those items, something that has already occurred in your project and has impacted your project is a issue. Okay, but if you see here, this is not something which you envisaged when the project started. So it's a scope that has come out of the blue, which is okay, which you need to cater to as Ground Scanner is your client. Okay, but it can't be classified as an issue because it was not something that came up when you were doing the risk analysis of the project in the planning phase. Okay, so issue log will not be updated here for sure. Let's go sprint backlog. Okay, so this is where again understanding the basics of Agile will be very important, guys, because you need to understand the difference between a sprint backlog and a product backlog. Okay, so if you know this and you analyze this question very critically, you will understand that that's a product feature that's getting added into your Agile scope. So then you go and update the product backlog. You don't update the sprint backlog because sprint backlog is a subset of your whole product backlog, and it is not mandatory that since this product request has come now, you need to include it in this sprint which is running at the moment. Okay, you can do an analysis and then you can include it in your next iteration or the iteration after that or the sprint after that. Okay, so you should not update the sprint backlog now, because again, since this request has come now, you have updated the scope, you have updated the schedule, you need to do the impact analysis and understand what other verticals of the project it will affect. Again, data gathering, okay, before taking action, before you go and update the sprint backlog. And even before the sprint backlog, you need to update the product backlog. Very important, guys. Okay, so that's why sprint backlog is a wrong option. Still, if you have any confusion regarding the product backlog and the sprint backlog, please Google the terms and read it out. Okay, it's a very important concept of Agile which you need to keep in mind. Next, definition of ready. Again, another important term of Agile. It's very important, guys. The definition of ready means that whenever a scope comes for Agile, whenever a user story comes in Agile, everyone from the customer to the client to the end user to your team, everyone should be on the same grounds on what is the definition of ready. So adding this extra functionality will not mean something different for you and something different for your customer or something different for your team. Everyone should be on the same page, and that should be documented in a definition of ready document where everyone knows that when the functionality is added, how it is supposed to behave, so that even if you deliver the project, you may say that I have done this functionality, and ground scanner may come up and say that no, it is not performing as I expected. So it's important for you as a project manager not to end up yourself and your team in a situation like this. So that's why definition of ready in this scenario should definitely be updated. Okay. Next is risk register. Okay. This is also a very good option, guys. And why risk register update is very important, because whenever there is a scope that gets added to any project, be it hybrid, be it agile, be it waterfall, you should go back to your risk register and update in terms of what additional risks this additional scope can cause. Okay, and you need to develop risk responses. You may need not to implement all of them, but whenever a scope comes, it's very important that you go back to your risk register and assess the risks that's already there and see that whether there are any additional risks that are getting created for this additional scope. Okay, so updating risk register is also a correct option. So you should update a risk register whenever a new scope is added into your project. Now let's look at the last option, option E, resource management plan. So it's a new scope that has been added to your project, guys, and you need to execute this scope. And you need to understand that whether you need any additional resources to do this scope. Okay, you may not have capacity in your team, okay, to execute this scope. Then you have to look out for options of outsourcing it, hiring coders, hiring developers from vendors or suppliers external to your company. Okay, so the first thing which you need to do is, before that, you update and check your resource management plan and see that whether your team has capacity enough to take up this additional scope. And it is not only related to Agile, it is related to any scope change whenever it comes during the execution or the monitoring and controlling stage of the project. So that's why resource management plan is also a good document which you need to update as a part of this scenario. Now, a very important thing that you have to note here, guys, is this phrase called most likely. Okay, so this is a very important phrase, and in my Lighthall class, I have already mentioned it multiple times that whenever you are reading a question, look out for these kind of phrases. Okay, so when it talks about most likely, it means that what is the highest probability in terms of the documents that needs to be updated as a part of this scenario. Can't you update issue log? Nobody is stopping you to do it. Can't you update the sprint log? Nobody is stopping you to take it as a part of the current sprint which you are running at the moment, right? When this request has come. But in the end, these are low probability option, guys. And you need to understand what is that thin line of difference that differentiates a low probability option from a high probability option. And that's why even if remotely you can say that A and B are correct, this phrase actually makes these two incorrect. And it is a very high probability that the definition of ready will be updated. It's a very high probability that the risk register will be updated, and it's most likely or a very high probability that the resource management plan will also be updated. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option C, D and E. So that was all for this video, guys. Okay, now note that what we solved today was only a flavor of the type of questions that we will be actually solving in the Lighthall masterclass. Okay, and not only that, I'll also teach you the frameworks that you need to use to solve such questions in your PMP exam. You do not want to miss out on this opportunity. Okay, Alternatively, if you want to prepare on your own, you can explore a few links which I have mentioned in the description section of the video, which will give you a thorough understanding of the topic of Agile for your PMP exam. That's all for today, guys. I wish you all the best for your PMP exam, and I will see you in the next video.